Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified, an answer to what, why and how of newspaper reading from UPSC Civil Services examination perspective. Now today we'll be taking up the New Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper dated 25th February 2023, and the important news to be discussed has been displayed on your screen. Now let's start our discussion with this very important news appearing on page number 1, and this news is with respect to menstrual leave policy. And here the Supreme Court has rejected the claim of the petitioner, which stated that various state governments are not implementing the provisions with respect to Maternity Benefit Act regarding menstrual leave policy. The petitioner also stated that there were only few private organizations which were implementing the provisions with respect to menstrual leave policy for women. However, the Supreme Court has rejected this petition, saying that it is centre's call to take any decision with respect to menstrual leave for women. And here the Supreme Court has also stated that the petitioner can approach the Union Ministry of Women and Child Development. And on the other hand, the court has also flagged this concern that this menstrual leave can also act as a disincentive for those organizations which aims to hire women. So the Chief Justice of India here has highlighted that there are various dimensions or different dimensions to the issue, and accordingly we leave it to the policy makers, that is to the government as such. So let them first formulate a policy and we will consider it then. These are the words of the Chief Justice of India. Now this topic of menstrual leave policy becomes very important from the perspective of GS paper 1 regarding the role and issues relating to women, their problems and remedies, and also under GS paper 2, particularly from the perspective of social justice regarding welfare schemes for the vulnerable sections, the laws, and also issues pertaining to health of women. Now, provisions for menstrual leave can be associated as part of a rights issue, particularly with respect to Article 21 of the Indian Constitution, which provides for right to life and personal liberty, and also Article 42 of the Indian Constitution, which is a part of directive principles of state policy. So, Article 42 mentions about provisions for just and humane conditions of work and maternity relief. So it says that the state shall make provision for securing just and humane conditions of work and for maternity relief. And accordingly, the central government has enacted the Maternity Benefit Act. So in this article, let us go through the claims of the petitioner and also examine menstrual leave policy with respect to arguments in favor and also arguments against. So first of all, let us go through the petitioner's appeal in this particular case. Here, the petitioner, through a PIL, that is public interest litigation, had sought menstrual paid leave for female students and workers. The petitioners further claimed that menstrual pain leave was also largely disregarded by the society and also considered as a taboo, and there were only few private organizations and some state government who had provided for menstrual pain leave. Further, the petitioners also urged the Supreme Court to direct the state governments to establish regulation to implement menstrual pain leave as per the Maternity Benefit Act. Further, the petitioner also asked for effective implementation of Section 14 of Maternity Benefit Act, which provides for appointing of inspectors to implement the provisions of Maternity Benefit Act. So if you go through Section 14 of Maternity Benefit Act, it mentions about appointment of inspectors. So it says that appropriate government may by notification in official gazette appoint such officers to be the inspectors for the purposes of this act and may define local limits of jurisdiction within which they shall exercise their function under this act. And their function is to implement the provisions of this act and also ensure that the organizations are providing menstrual paid leave to its female employees. Now the petitioners highlighted about example of two state government, namely Meghalaya and Bihar government. Now regarding Meghalaya government, the petitioner stated that it is the only state to appoint inspectors under the Maternity Benefit Act, whereas Bihar government is the only state to provide menstrual pain leave as part of 1992 policy. And also the petitioners claimed that denial of menstrual pain leave in other states results in violation of Article 14 of the Indian Constitution. However, despite these claims, in the case of Shailendra Mani Tripathi versus Union of India, the Supreme Court dismissed the petition and has also asked the petitioner to make a representation before the Union Ministry of Women and Child Development. Now, it's important to understand this whole idea of menstrual pain leave with respect to arguments in favor and also arguments against, and also with respect to the aspect of rights issues as it impacts Article 21 and also Article 42 of the Indian Constitution provided under Directive Principles of State Policy. And accordingly, the central government had enacted the Maternity Benefit Act of 1961. And recently, the government has introduced certain amendment in 2017. So first of all, let us go through the amendments introduced in the Maternity Benefit Act, and then we'll try to critically analyze whether menstrual pain leave should be provided or not. That is arguments in favor and also argument against. Now earlier, leave was provided for in total of 12 weeks. However, this has been extended to 26 weeks for the first 2 children. So it says that as per the new Maternity Benefit Amendment Act of 2017, the maternity leave available to the working woman has been increased from 12 weeks to 26 weeks. So this is the first major change introduced through the 2017 amendment. The second aspect is that maternity benefit should not be availed before 8 weeks from the date of expected delivery. Now earlier this was 6 weeks and this has now been extended to 8 weeks. However, there is a caveat here that these extended benefits of 26 weeks is only applicable for the first 2 children but not for the third child. So it says that in case of a woman having a third child, maternity benefit will continue to be 12 weeks which cannot be availed before 6 weeks from the date of expected delivery. This in a way also disincentivizes the third child. Now there is another aspect with respect to adoption. So it says that a woman who legally adopts a child below the age of 3 months or a commissioning mother shall be entitled to maternity benefit for a period of 12 weeks from the date of the child is handed over to the adopting mother or the commissioning mother. Now commissioning mother means a biological mother who uses her egg to create an embryo implanted in any other woman. Now apart from this, provisions relating to work from home and creche facility have also been introduced in the 2017 amendment. So these are some of the important changes introduced through the 2017 amendment in the Maternity Benefit Act. Now based on our discussion, let's go through this question asked in the prelims of 2019. The question was, which of the following statements are correct regarding the Maternity Benefit Amendment Act of 2017? First, pregnant women are entitled for 3 months pre-delivery and 3 months post-delivery paid leave. No, this statement is incorrect, as only 8 weeks of leave can be availed prior to the expected date of delivery. Hence, the first statement becomes incorrect. Now, the second statement says that enterprises with creches must allow the mother minimum 6 creche visits daily. Now, if we go through section 11A of Maternity Benefit Amendment Act, then it says that every establishment having 50 or more employees shall have the facility of creche within such distance as may be prescribed. And the employer shall allow 4 visits a day to the creche by the woman, which shall also include the interval for rest allowed to her. And every establishment shall intimate in writing and electronically to every woman at the time of her initial appointment regarding every benefit available under the Maternity Benefit Act. So based on this, the second statement also becomes incorrect. Third, women with 2 children get reduced entitlements. Yes, this is true as we have already seen. So the question was, select the correct answer using the code given below. So here the correct answer becomes C, that is 3 only. So we understand that the provisions for Maternity Benefit Amendment Act 2017 becomes very important, as even UPSC has asked a question in the prelims examination. Now coming to the part of critical analysis as to whether menstrual pain leave should be provided or should not be provided. So arguments in favor includes it should be considered as sickness, as women often experience menstrual cramps or pain and can be as intense as sickness, hence requiring rest for their fruitful engagement in economic activities. Further, it says that such a leave will lead to reduction of stigma associated with periods, and it will also help to create awareness and dilute the so-called taboo which is prevalent in the society associated with periods. Next set of argument in favor of providing such leave is that it safeguards equal protection of law under Article 14, which calls for different to be treated differently, and women going through menstrual periods can be considered as a class in themselves, and hence Article 14 comes into picture here. Another point is that there is also global best practice, as various countries like Taiwan, Japan have institutionalized period leaves or menstrual leaves. So these can be said to be some of the arguments in support or in favor of menstrual leave. Coming to the arguments against menstrual leave, it reinforces gender stereotypes and may affect employment opportunities. And this is the part which has also been highlighted by the Supreme Court. And because of this, the Supreme Court has stated that let the government decide, because ultimately it is a policy decision. The next point is that such a leave can be used as an excuse to justify lower salaries or opportunities to women. Further, it may infringe upon their right to privacy, as seeking leave would require female workers to inform the employee about the reason for such a leave, and it is liable to be misused, as this pain varies from individual to individual. So if a question is asked with respect to examine or critical analysis of whether menstrual pain leave should be provided by private and other organizations or not, you can highlight these important arguments in favor and also against. Thus this topic becomes important both from the perspective of GS paper 1 and also GS paper 2. Now this news appears on page number 4, and it is with respect to ERCP or Eastern Rajasthan Canal Project. So this news highlights that Eastern Rajasthan Canal Project takes political twist as Madhya Pradesh government approaches Supreme Court for stay. So here let us understand about this entire backdrop. So Rajasthan government had started the Eastern Rajasthan Canal Project mainly for interlinking of rivers of Rajasthan in the southern area, that is in southern Rajasthan. And the interlinking of the three rivers were namely Kali Sindh, Parvati and Chambal. And the purpose of interlinking of rivers as per the ERCP project was to fulfill the need of drinking water of the local population and also fulfill the need of irrigation of over 2 lakh hectares of land. And according to the state of Rajasthan, this would have fulfilled the irrigation need of the farmers, especially in southern Rajasthan. Now there are two things which we need to understand here. First is that state of Madhya Pradesh has opposed this project, and second, the state of Rajasthan has demanded national status for this project, thereby maintaining that central government should contribute 90% of the fund. So this is the demand of the state government of Rajasthan, whereas the state government of Madhya Pradesh has opposed this particular project. So in this regard, this news says that Rajasthan is seeking national status for the proposed project to be built at a cost of 37,200 crores, set to benefit 13 districts of southern Rajasthan, and it would be a major initiative for interlinking of Parvati, Kali Sindh and Chambal rivers of Rajasthan. But the problem is that the Chambal river also flows into Madhya Pradesh, and because of this, the state government of Madhya Pradesh has opposed this Eastern Rajasthan Canal Project. Now another important fact is that on the Kali Sindh river, the Madhya Pradesh government has built up the Kundalia Dam, and on Nevaz river, which is a tributary of Parvati river, the Madhya Pradesh government has built up another dam, namely the Mohanpura Dam. And for the construction of both these dams, the state government of Rajasthan had given their approval, although the Rajasthan government claims that the approval was sought after the construction of these dams, but still the state government of Rajasthan had given their approval, as both these dams fulfill the irrigational needs of farmers. So the state of Rajasthan is saying that since they have approved the construction of dam in Madhya Pradesh, then why is Madhya Pradesh opposing the construction of Eastern Rajasthan Canal Project? As for this purpose, the state government of Madhya Pradesh has approached the Supreme Court. Now, this topic becomes important mainly from our prelims and mains perspective, particularly with respect to geography, the location of rivers and the flow of rivers, and also regarding environment. And in this topic, we also need to know the importance of any project being declared as a national project or a project of national importance. First of all, let us understand the concerns expressed by Rajasthan government. Now, the Rajasthan government says that the detailed project report or DPR for this particular project was prepared as per the 2010 guidelines of Central Water Commission. And the detailed project report for Eastern Rajasthan Canal Project was also prepared in the meeting of Madhya Pradesh Rajasthan Interstate Control Board in the year 2005, whereby it was agreed that either state for any project can use water from the catchment area. And catchment areas are locations in low-lying regions in which water from higher areas collect into a single water body. So if this is a river flowing and there are various tributaries, then all these areas where the tributaries are getting merged into the river, all these becomes the catchment area. Further, the state government of Rajasthan also claimed that no objection certificate was taken by the Madhya Pradesh government after construction of dams on Kali Sindh and Parvati River. Further, the state of Rajasthan has also claimed that the central government is discriminating with respect to the Eastern Rajasthan Canal project. And since this project will fulfill the irrigational need or irrigational requirement of more than 2 lakh hectare area, hence the state government of Rajasthan has asked the central government to give this project the status of national project along with 90% funding. So here let us first of all understand about the eligibility criteria for any project to be declared as national project. So the Union Ministry of Jal Shakti has provided certain criteria for declaring irrigation project as national project. The first criteria is that any international projects where usage of water in India is required by a treaty or where planning and early completion of the project is necessary. The second criteria is regarding interstate projects, that is between two states, which are dragging on due to non-resolution of interstate issues relating to sharing of cost, rehabilitation and aspects of power production, etc., including interlinking projects. The third criteria is regarding intrastate projects, that is within the state itself. For example, this particular project of Rajasthan. So intrastate projects with additional irrigation potential of more than 2 lakh hectare and with no dispute regarding sharing of water and where hydrology is established. So it is because of this criteria that Rajasthan is demanding that the Eastern Rajasthan Canal project should be declared as a project of national importance and the centre should contribute 90% of the fund. The fourth point highlighted here is regarding ERM projects or projects with respect to extension, renovation or modernization projects envisaging extension or restoration of irrigation potential of 2 lakh hectares subject to certain criteria. These criteria are command area development and watershed management works shall be ensured in the entire command of ERM, that is extension, renovation and modernization. Command area development and watershed management works shall be taken up simultaneously with extension, renovation and modernization work so as to facilitate achievement of benchmark efficiency for water usage. Management of command area system by water users association after ERM work will be necessary. Independent evaluation of the project will be carried out after project implementation and project should achieve the benchmark water use efficiency in practice as prescribed by the Central Water Commission. So these are some of the criteria as to when can any irrigation project can be declared as a project of national importance or a national project under Jal Shakti Ministry. Now, as of now, a total of 16 projects have been declared as national projects under this scheme, and the list of which has been provided in your PDF. So you can go through those irrigation projects which has been declared as a national project. And the funding pattern for national projects is that for projects in 8 northeastern states, along with Himalayan states of Uttarakhand and Himachal Pradesh, UTs of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh, the funding pattern is that 90% of the fund will be provided by center and 10% of the fund will be provided by state. Whereas project in other states, including that of Rajasthan, the funding pattern would be 60% would be funded by the center and only 40% will be funded by the state. However, it is up to the central government based on the requirement and necessity of any particular project that it can extend this funding criteria. So it highlights that guidelines say that the funding pattern of project included in national project scheme can change as per the discretion of the central government to the extent it deems fit for any national project. So it's up to the central government to declare percentage of funding for any national project of irrigation. Now, after understanding about the criteria for giving any irrigation project a national status, let us understand the water status of Rajasthan. Now, as we all know that Rajasthan is the largest state of India in terms of territory and accounts for 10.4% of India's area, but has only 1.16% of India's surface water and 1.72% of groundwater. So clearly Rajasthan is a water deficient state. Now the problem here is that the river Chambal flows from Rajasthan to Madhya Pradesh, and the National Chambal Sanctuary is located on the tri-junction of Rajasthan, MP and UP. So clearly both Madhya Pradesh and Rajasthan have a say, as it is a interstate river, that is river flowing from one state to another. So here it highlights that among Rajasthan's river, only Chambal river basin has surplus water, but this water cannot be harvested as area around the Kota barrage is a designated wildlife sanctuary. So if you see into this map, this is where the Kota barrage is, and area around the Kota barrage is a national Chambal sanctuary. So water in these areas cannot be harvested, that is dam cannot be built into these areas. Further, these areas are also important from ecological perspective, as gharials, which are critically endangered animals, are found only in the National Chambal Sanctuary, and it also has red-crowned roof turtle and river dolphins. So it is because of the presence of Chambal river basin and National Chambal Sanctuary, the government of Rajasthan has proposed the Eastern Rajasthan Canal project, and Rajasthan accordingly has demanded national project status for its Eastern Rajasthan Canal project with 90% funds from the central government. Now, the problem here is that since the Chambal river is an interstate river, and hence state of Madhya Pradesh has opposed the construction of this particular project. Now the Rajasthan government further claims that annually about 19,000 million cubic meters of water of Chambal flows into the ocean, and out of these 19,000 million cubic meters of water, ERCP project will consume only about 3,500 million cubic of water of river Chambal. Hence, not much water of river Chambal will be utilized or consumed by construction of the ERCP project. Hence, there would be surplus water which will be flowing into the state of Madhya Pradesh. So the state of Rajasthan highlights that the flow of river will not be adversely affected or impacted because of the ERCP project, because the Rajasthan government has gauged that out of the 19,000 million cubic meters of water flowing into the ocean, the ERCP project will consume only 3,500 million cubic meters of water of Chambal. Thus, it highlights that the surplus water flowing into the ocean of river Chambal will be sustainably utilized without adversely affecting the flow of Chambal river. Now, another concern highlighted by the state of Rajasthan is that water has been provided under state list under entry 17. So, there is no reason as to why central government will oppose this particular project. And also the fact that so far the central government has not contributed any amount, and it is completely a state project. And according to entry 17 of state list, water supplies, irrigation and canals, drainage and embankments, water storage and water power are a part of state list subject to provisions of entry 56 of union list. Now entry 56 of union list mentions about regulation and development of interstate rivers and river valleys to the extent to which such regulation and development under the control of the union is declared by parliament by law to be expedient in the public interest. So effectively, the Rajasthan government has stated that water supplies, irrigation and canals and also drainage comes under state list under entry 17. Now based on our discussion, let's look into this question asked by UPSC in the prelims of 2017. The question is, if you want to see gharials in their natural habitat, which one of the following is the best place to visit? Options were A. Bhitarkanika mangroves, B. Chambal river, C. Pulicat lake and D. Dipor Beel. In this, the correct answer of course is Chambal river. So we understand that we need to know about Chambal river and also its ecology. So Chambal river itself is the principal tributary of Yamuna river. That is, the Chambal river meets Yamuna river. Chambal river originates in Vindhya range near Mau in Indore district of MP, then flows through the states of Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan and UP before meeting Yamuna in Etawah district of Uttar Pradesh. And its tributaries are Banas, Kali Sindh, Kunnu and Mej. Kali Sindh river. It is the principal tributary of Chambal river. That is, the Kali Sindh river joins the Chambal river. It originates in Dewas district of Madhya Pradesh on northern slopes of Vindhya hills, flows in MP and enters Rajasthan in Jhalawar district and joins Chambal river in Kota district of Rajasthan. Then we have Parvati river. originates in the northern slopes of Vindhya Hills near Astha in Sehor district of MP, and this is the third largest tributary of Chambal river. Now, an interesting fact is that it enters Rajasthan in Baran district, where it forms the boundary between MP and Rajasthan. So it enters Rajasthan in Baran district and forms the boundary between Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh, and then flows in Rajasthan. That is, it again flows back into Rajasthan before again forming a boundary between MP and Rajasthan, where it joins Chambal. So the Parvati river forms the boundary between Rajasthan and MP and again flows back to join the Chambal river. Now, coming to the objections raised by the central government, it says that as per the prevailing norms, projects on interstate rivers, that is between two states, are required to be planned for 75% dependable yield. However, the Eastern Rajasthan Canal project is planned on 50% dependable yield. So let's understand this concept of dependable yield. Now, yield of the catchment refers to total quantity of surface water that can be expected in a given period from a stream at the outlet of its catchment, and this is known as the yield of the catchment in that period. Suppose this yield of the catchment in that period is 1000 million cubic meters. That is, this much amount of water flows into that particular catchment area. So it highlights that the annual yield from a catchment is the end product of various processes such as precipitation, infiltration, and evapotranspiration operating on the catchment area. So effectively, this is the meaning of yield of the catchment area. And here it also highlights that the central government has been pushing for the integration of ERCP with Parvati Kali Sindh Chambal Link Canal project, which is one of the 30 link projects identified under National Perspective Plan prepared for National Interlinking projects. So these are some of the objections which has been raised by the central government with respect to Eastern Rajasthan Canal Linking Project or ERCP project. Thus, this topic becomes very important both from the prelims and mains perspective and gets covered under geography and also environment. Now let's take up this article appearing on page number 6, and it says that the panel counts 70,158 subsisting structures in the buffer zones of Kerala's protected areas. Now in this topic, let's understand certain basics with respect to protected areas and also buffer zones. So this news effectively highlights that protected areas of Kerala have more than 70,000 subsisting structures in their 1 kilometer buffer zones with residential buildings and related structures, which accounts for 74% of the total count, and this is as per the final report of Thotaril B. Radhakrishnan Committee. So here let's understand about protected areas, about buffer zones, and also some of the important aspects pertaining to Kerala. So the state of Kerala has 5 national parks, it has 17 wildlife sanctuaries and 1 community reserve. Now these protected areas or different kinds of protected areas have been categorized or provided under the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. Now talking about the national parks of Kerala, we have Eravikulam National Park, Silent Valley National Park, Annamudi Shola National Park, Mathiketan Shola National Park, and Pambadum Shola National Park. Whereas the tiger reserves of Kerala includes Parambikulam Wildlife Sanctuary, which is a tiger reserve, and Periyar Wildlife Sanctuary, which is also a tiger reserve. And there is also 1 community reserve in Kerala, namely Kadalundi Valikunu Community Reserve, and it is in the Kozhikode and Malappuram district of Kerala. So here it's important to understand about these protected areas. So protected areas are those in which human occupation or at least the exploitation of natural resources is limited, and the definition that has been widely accepted across regional and global frameworks have been provided by International Union for Conservation of Nature, that is IUCN, and its categorization guidelines for protected areas. Now, according to Indian legislation, the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972 has provided for different kinds of protected areas, which includes national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, conservation reserves, and community reserves. Now, the term protected area in general also includes marine protected areas. However, this term marine protected area has not been provided under the Wildlife Protection Act. So this marine protected areas includes the boundaries of which will include some area of the ocean, transboundary protected areas that overlap multiple countries, which remove the borders inside the area for conservation and economic purposes. Now let's understand the basics of national park. First basic is that who can declare an area as national park. So according to the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972, both state government and central government can declare an area as national park. So the definition of national park as per the Wildlife Protection Act highlights that it means an area declared whether under section 35 or section 38. Now under section 35 it is the state government which can declare an area as national park, whereas under section 38 it is the central government which can declare an area as national park, and these have been highlighted here. Further, section 38 also mentions power of central government to declare an area as sanctuary or national park. So basically the central government can also declare an area as wildlife sanctuary. So both national park and wildlife sanctuaries can be declared by both state governments and also central government according to the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. Now another important aspect mentioned here is that no human activity is permitted inside the national park except for the ones permitted by the Chief Wildlife Warden of the state. Further, no alteration of boundaries of a national park by the state government can take place unless it has been recommended by the national board. Now, other than national park and wildlife sanctuary, let's understand about conservation reserves and community reserve. The provisions for both of these have been provided under Wildlife Protection Act of 1972, and these were added later, that is through an amendment. So conservation reserve highlights that state government may, after having consultation with the local communities, declare any area owned by the government or declare areas adjacent to national parks and sanctuaries and those areas which link one protected area with another as a conservation reserve for protecting landscapes, seascapes, flora and fauna and their habitat. And these categories of protected areas were introduced through the amendment of 2002. Another important aspect with respect to conservation reserves, where the conservation reserve includes any land owned by the central government, its prior concurrence shall be obtained before making such a declaration or before declaring the area as conservation reserve. Now talking about community reserve, it says that the state government may, where the community or an individual has volunteered to conserve wildlife and its habitat, declare any private or community land not comprised within a national park, sanctuary or a conservation reserve as a community reserve. And this can be done to protect fauna, flora and traditional or cultural conservation values and practices. So a community reserve cannot be declared within a national park, a wildlife sanctuary or a conservation reserve. Another important aspect highlighted here is that after the issue of the notification of an area declared as community reserve, no change in the land use pattern shall be made within the community reserve except in accordance with a resolution passed by the management committee and approval of the same by the state government. Hence, approval of the management committee of the community reserve is essential to alter the land use pattern. Now talking about the core zone and buffer zone, generally these zones are associated with biosphere reserves. And in a biosphere reserve, the inner part becomes the core zone, whereas the peripheral becomes the buffer zone. And the third aspect becomes the transitional zone. And tourism is generally allowed in the buffer zone, but not in the core zone. So it says that core zone includes protected areas as they act as reference points on the natural state of the ecosystems represented by the biosphere reserves. Core zone is where the actual forest exists and there are no villages inside the core zone. The core zone is basically an important area where the conservation of wildlife and natural resource is strictly protected by the forest department. Now talking about buffer zone, the area that surrounds or adjoins the core areas, that is this area where nature is conserved alongside compatible human use of land or water. These areas might include activities such as ecotourism, recreation, sustainable agriculture and forestry along with other activities. And the buffer zone is mainly where both villagers and animals coexist. And if you go through section 38O of the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972, then it mentions about the powers and functions of Tiger Conservation Authority. And one of the function of this authority is to lay down normative standards for tourism activities and guidelines for Project Tiger from time to time, and also for conservation in the buffer and core areas of tiger reserves and ensure their due compliance. So laying down normative standards for tourism activities around a tiger reserve, particularly in the buffer area and core area, becomes one of the major functions of Tiger Conservation Authority. So this news becomes important mainly from your prelims perspective with respect to the aspect of environment. So with this, we come to an end to today's discussion. Thank you for watching DNS.